Tonight's show is brought to you by New Beginnings, Bendetti Optics, and you, our listeners. No matter what day, anytime, anywhere, Buc-ee's will welcome you into his fuzzy little arms and pat you on the back and make you a barbecue sandwich and give you a kiss on the forehead, and you'll walk away feeling like everything's okay. What is up, all of you wayward souls, and welcome back to the Wayward Stories podcast. Wayward Stories is the podcast where we tell the tales of our adventures and our wanderings and our wonderings. And boys and girls, we're going to be doing a broad, vast amount of wandering and wondering tonight. This is probably going to be a long podcast. But anyway, first things first, I hope you guys are enjoying your Thanksgiving afternoon as I sat down here in the studio to record this podcast. Many of you are probably tripping out on tryptophan as we speak, having stuffed yourself with turkey or whatever else it is you like to enjoy on your Thanksgiving meal, and are falling asleep on the couch right now watching a football game and drooling. At least that's how I remember Thanksgiving days. So Justin, why are you not on a road trip like you always do? You talk about this every year. Well, guys, I just got back like 36 hours ago from 6 days on the road. Oh my God, the numbers. Y'all, 26 hours there, 28 hours there with the traffic, 27 hours back, 3,300 miles just in the trip there and back, plus the mileage up around in the Northeast as I did the things I was doing. I'm good. The timing was different because I drove up to my commencement. So my birthday Thanksgiving road trip, today's Thanksgiving, tomorrow is my birthday. Well, last Sunday was my commencement. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight is this giant road trip and everything concomitant, everything that came along with it. But we've got a lot to go over. This is probably going to be a long podcast tonight. I don't think I'm going to make it a two-parter. And we're just going to dive right into it and get started. I hope you guys are enjoying that Thanksgiving meal. You know what my Thanksgiving was? While we're here on the subject, I woke up this morning for the first time in a long time, due to circumstances I'm about to tell you about, with a giant weight lifted off my shoulder. And with school especially, I didn't have anything. I've had a couple of months to start to reintegrate into normal society, and get used to not having deadlines and yada, yada, yada. And I just chilled this morning. I wandered around the house. I did things that I've been meaning to do for 3.5 years, and it felt good because it was just nice to be home after all that time on the road. I took a little drive up the road to Workman's Travel Plaza and got a couple of tamales and had a couple of tamales, and that was my Thanksgiving dinner, and it was perfect for Justin. They really hit the spot. And just remember the lesson in that, guys. For all of you out there having your traditional Thanksgivings, that's wonderful. And I'm glad that you guys have that and are able to do that. But for any of you out there like myself that don't really have that option and life didn't just really work out traditionally, you can have just as wonderful a time and just as valid a celebration figuring out how to do things your own way. And that's kind of what this show, really, one of the big overarching themes is do it your own way, and it's okay. For the moment, we still have that freedom in America to be whoever the hell we want to be and do it however the heck we want to do it. And that's valid. We don't have to conform to all the traditional cultural norms if we don't want to or if we don't have the option. And it doesn't make us any less of a human being. I enjoyed the hell out of those tamales, and I am enjoying the hell out of recording this podcast right now and the things I'm going to do over the next 3 or 4 days. So just remember that, guys. Just remember that. So getting started into this episode, let's do a little housekeeping. Please rate, please review, please subscribe, please review the review. So important. And write in if you'd like to get in touch at mywaywardstory@gmail.com. Our good friend that we've made in the last year or so here on the show, Mary R., sent me a really nice letter, really nice email the other day. And it was good to hear from you. And another one of our friends, Michael S., he wrote in, "Hey, Mike, just letting you know, got your email, sent one back to you, and happy Thanksgiving to you too, buddy." I love hearing from you guys. So you guys, get in touch if you would like. All right, guys, with all that said, now I have some really, really big news. My announcement to the world. Only a few people actually know this. Just 2 days before I started on this road trip, literally found out officially, just like 1 day before I left, that I got hired by the National Park Service to be a ranger down at Portsmouth National Historic Site, where I have been volunteering so many hours for the last 3.5 years. That's a big win, guys. Don't get me wrong. We're not out of the woods yet. Like, I'm not going to get into all those details, but just trust me. It's by no means just an out of the woods, but it's a foot in the door, and it is something I have killed myself. Bent over backwards. So many hours to get that degree, to get this chance, and to learn to do the job, to get the hands-on experience, to do the networking, to do all the things to get the chance. And it finally paid off. So I am no longer, for the first time in like 9 years, I am no longer a delivery driver. I am officially a park ranger and a cultural anthropologist. So it might have cost me $28,000 in 3.5 years of the hardest thing I've ever done. And so much sleep. But it paid off. And now I get to go do stuff I love. That's pretty cool. And I'm telling you guys this because a lot of you have been around from the beginning of the show. But if you haven't been from the beginning, a lot of you have been around since close to the beginning when I started school. When I took this on, and you've been along for the ride, and you've listened to me talk about assignments and things I'm doing and how hard it is and blah, 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 blah. You probably got sick of listening to me whine. Well, here's your payoff. It worked out in the end. You know, now with that in mind, we can get on with telling the stories of tonight's show because, like, this is the framework of my road trip. I've got the job. I got the degree. I'm going to go walk at commencement. The hero's journey. I prefer to say like the protagonist's journey because I ain't no hero. But the protagonist's journey is coming to a head. We're going to go do the prescribed ritual initiation, the conferral of status. It's just so fitting. It's just so fitting. And I felt this building up for a few weeks, even before I knew that I got that job. I could feel this buildup if it feels like everything and not just the last couple of years and the last 10 years since my divorce and the last 40 years of my life. Everything seems to have been coming to a head with this, my 45th birthday, which in itself is kind of interesting because that's kind of a nice round half number. 45 and 45 is 90. If I get 90 years out of this life, that's a pretty good life. I can live with that number, right? The first half is ending. The second half is about to begin, both literally and metaphorically. How interesting is that? It seems almost like it was determined to be that way. Whether it was or not, doesn't even matter. Here we are. And thus, we are turning the page. And I think that's why tonight's episode might just be called Turn the Page. Anyway, to new beginnings, right? To new beginnings. So let's get into tonight's show. So this was a big combo road trip. It's always a combo, birthday and Thanksgiving. But this one, and the reason it didn't run across Thanksgiving Day this year is because my commencement was last Sunday in Manchester, New Hampshire. So I set it up so that this enormous road trip, oh my God, was it a big road trip, would land me in Manchester by last Sunday to walk at my commencement and to try to explore the Northeast for the first time in my life. Never been there before. It's been on my bucket list forever. And to be honest, it's still on my bucket list for reasons you'll find out as we go. And so it just came out the way that it came out. And guys, this is a big one. Okay. This is one of the biggest road trips I've ever taken. To Calgary and back, that was probably similar. I'd have to do the numbers on that. That was probably similar. But this one, there was a lot more in this one because let me tell you something. Everything in the whole world is in the Northeast United States. And for a nerd like me who nerds out on just about anything nerdy, every damn exit is a brown sign. and all you road trippers and all you history nerds and all of you cultural aficionados, anyone who loves that road knows what that brown sign means. Historic site, recreational area, national park, state park, city park, county park if you're in California, you name it. Every exit, multiples, one sign with multiple things on it. Here, the central U.S., you might drive 300 miles and then you'll see the brown sign for a place or a few places. A lot of times they'll be clustered because places of cultural significance will draw people, decade, generation, century after century. But they're not everywhere. Up there, it's literally every exit. Everything you go by, you're like, oh, I want to see that. Oh, I want to see that. Not possible. Not possible. You literally have to retire from whatever you're doing, get you a little scooter van, go up there and spend a couple of years going to every exit and figuring out what the hell is off that exit, because there's a lot of things. What we're going to do tonight is we're going to talk about the things I did, tell you how the trip went, tell you what it meant to me, man. There were some things that really hit me with all that time on the road, and give you guys some ideas along the way about things you could get into, adventures you could explore up there. Some of the things a little bit of an idiot's guide to a couple of things. I like to frame some of these episodes as an idiot's guide to whatever, because I learned the hard way. So here's some insider tips and tricks. I can give you at least one or two of those for this trip, for as little as I was able to do. Because as big as this trip was, 6 days long, understand, 4 of those days were 15 plus hour driving days just across the country. I had basically 2 days, basically 48 hours to explore everything I could in a small area. And in that small area, it will take you 3 hours to go 17 miles. That's an actual number that I kept up with. The traffic is wretched. That's one of the insider tips that we're about to get to here in just a minute. But we're going to go through my travel journal step by step, and I'm going to talk about what I did. Starting out with day one, listen, it was a Thursday. I drove and I drove and I drove for 14 hours. And basically, once I passed Morrilton, Little Rock, Conway area on Interstate 40 here in Arkansas, mind you, it was bumper to bumper traffic at 80 miles an hour all the way to frickin', where did I stay? Wasn't Wyville, Blacksburg, just outside of Blacksburg, Virginia. And it rained the whole time. It was a nightmare. A freaking nightmare. Listen, the population density is so intense out there. You were driving, when you have a flow of traffic, you might be going 75 miles an hour, inches from the bumpers of cars all around you, trading paint as you go. It sucked. I do not enjoy that kind of road tripping. However, the circumstance I was in was I have to make X amount of time and X amount of days to be in a place by a time. And the goal I'd set for myself is do all the driving on Thursday and Friday so I would have one full day with no commitments, no commencement, no anything, which would be Saturday in Salem, Massachusetts, and Lexington and Concord, possibly Boston. That's all right together. You wouldn't know that necessarily. Salem is 20 minutes from Lexington and Concord, the shot heard round the world, where the American Revolution began, and Boston's right there. It's all right together. So I was like, if I have a whole day there, maybe I'll be able to absorb some of the feeling of being in that area, which is what I'm after. I want to absorb the culture, the people, what it's like. One full day. So I drove my arse off for 2 days to try to secure that one full day window, plus the afternoon of Sunday after my commencement, and try to take whatever I could in that Sunday afternoon. Now, keeping in mind, we're in late November. The color on the trees is gone, so I did not get that out of this adventure. But I did get, in a way, you guys remember, any of you have been with me for a long time and have heard me talk about some of my stuff out on the California coast. How, for some people, they might be miserable hiking in a drenching rainstorm up the side of a mountain with a 1,200-foot incline to see waterfalls. But to me, I was in my little heaven, right? I was experiencing everything at the fullest capacity, naturally speaking, of what the central coast of California around San Francisco had to offer, which was torrential rains in January and beautiful, steep mountains with redwood trees everywhere and pouring waterfalls. I was miserable for a few hours physically, But spiritually, I was more alive than I've ever been in my entire life, because physical discomfort might last for a few minutes, but it's the experience you're having that is so incredible, right? So with that in mind, this is sort of the experience I had up there around the Atlantic Ocean, around Boston, around Salem, around the harbors and the ports. It was spitting snow. It was cold. It was a little drizzly. Every once in a while, there'd be some sunshine. But that's what you would expect out of the Northeast Atlantic coast in late November. And I loved that part of it. That was glorious. Do I want to go back and see the colorful trees? Yes, I do. But that in and of itself, I don't know. For me, there's almost a sense that it even makes it more potent because you feel it in your skin. You're not just taking something in visually. You can taste that cold air and the sea air, the salty sea air, but it's so, it's cold. It's biting into your skin. You feel what you are seeing, right, on your flesh. It adds like a sensory aspect to everything you're taking in. And I know I'm a weirdo, but to me, that makes it almost a more robust experience. It makes it almost better that it is that way sometimes. It was really, really cool. So that's kind of what we're going to chat about a little bit tonight. Again, day one, there wasn't much to it. 14 hours of miserable driving in the rain. I drove for 3.5 hours through Virginia, which was the first time for me. Now, I've been to 30-something states, but I've never been from Virginia on up into the Northeast. These were all new states to me, and I'll go down the list of which states they were in a minute. I added, I think, 8 or 9 states to my list of states I visited or drove through. But I drove through Virginia for 3.5 hours in the freaking Smoky Mountains, right? Have no damn clue what they look like. Still couldn't tell you today because it was raining, it was misty, it was foggy, there was trucks all around me, there was road spray from their tires. It was a nightmare experience. It was late, I was tired, I was pushing towards Blacksburg and where I needed to sleep for the night. Drove through those mountains for 3.5 hours, have no effing clue what they look like. I'm sure they're beautiful. Because I came home a different way. There's no way I will ever drive to the Northeast that route again. Never, ever, 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 ever. It was terrible. Anyway, day 2, another 13 hours, but day 2 got a little bit more interesting. The traffic was still a freaking nightmare and it got worse. The traffic got worse. Lots of stop and go. I was constantly setting still and then edging a few inches. And I wasn't in any cities yet. I was in interstates that were 8 lanes wide. 4 on the other side, 4 on this side, 3 on the other side, 3 on this side, 6 lanes, 8 lanes. And we were just constantly sitting still, like just inching. That's how much traffic there is up there. It was mind-boggling. It was mind-boggling. And it was like mid-morning, mid-afternoon on a freaking Thursday, a Friday. That just didn't make any sense. It's just, how do you people do it up there? How do you do it? Well, I know how you do it. You take the back roads, and that's something we'll chat about a little bit in a minute too. But on day 2, it did get a little bit more interesting because, and let me knock this out. I hit the Buc-ee's in Sevierville on day 1 because it was about time for gas. I needed a bathroom break, and all of a sudden, there, shining on the horizon, like a savior in a red cap with buck teeth, was Buc-ee's, with barbecue brisket and palatial bathrooms awaiting on me. And I was like, oh my God, they're the new Denny's. They're always open, no matter what day, anytime, anywhere. Buc-ee's will welcome you into his fuzzy little arms and pat you on the back and make you a barbecue sandwich and give you a kiss on the forehead. And you'll walk away feeling like everything's okay. They're everywhere now, it turns out. But it was a welcome sight on a miserable, cold, rainy night in Virginia. That's a song I'm probably going to have to write. That'll be my first farcical country album. Anyway, day 2, it gets more interesting. And I travel through Virginia, West Virginia, for just a split second. Just that little squiggly tip up at the top that looks kind of like a bread tie when it's coming off the end of the bag. Maryland to Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York. I was like less than 100 miles outside of New York City at one point, and that was kind of trippy. Connecticut and Massachusetts. So I added 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 new states in that one day. And of course, I only drove through any of them, only clipped them. This was, again, a miserable drive, but there was about 30 minutes that morning. This was a 13-hour drive day. There was about 30 minutes that morning that was a really nice drive where I was somewhere in Pennsylvania. I got really close to Gettysburg, and I just didn't have time. That was the other thing. There's a lot of regret about this trip because I was so close to so many really important things that fit into my degree, that fit into my interest, that fit into everything. And yeah, missed them because I didn't have time. I was driving right by. So anyway, there was a few minutes there where it was kind of beautiful, and it was everything you expect to see in Pennsylvania. These giant old 300-year-old Pennsylvania Dutch barns and silos and these little homesteads off in these rolling hilled valleys with green grass and hay meadows and crops in the field. And that was really, really cool. It was really, really pretty. It looked like something out of a movie. And here's a little note. The interstates are the worst, right? Okay, now out west, I'm not messed up about driving interstates out west, out in New Mexico, Arizona, West Texas, anywhere. But up there in the Northeast, the interstates are your worst enemy. Like, they're like what would happen if Satan himself and all of his little minions decided to get into street planning. Like if they became civil engineers, that's what happens. And the interstates are the worst. The people driving, there's so many. It's not that they're even that bad at drivers. It's just there's so many. But what I want to point out is, if you have the opportunity to check out like ahead of time and really look at the roads, more often than not, there's some old state highway that more or less follows the exact same corridor of your interstate that you're driving. And if you're prepared and you know what you're looking for, you might be able to jump on that little state highway and go the exact same place and pretty much the exact same everything, the same corridor as the interstate you're driving on, but do it with no cars around you and do it at a more leisurely pace. And also the big thing I found is when you get off of that interstate, when you have the chance or the time to be able to do some kind of a cutoff, some kind of shortcut, run alongside the interstate, you get to absorb where you're at so much more because you're not doing everything at speeds that could kill you within inches of bumpers of other cars. God knows what I did not see in that traffic because I was simply trained on the bumper of the car in front of me and the enormous semi that was somehow always next to me in the slow lane, threatening to take my life, right? You don't get a chance to look around. You're literally looking at the thing you're hoping doesn't kill you. Right? You get on those state highways, you can actually look at that awesome Dutch barn, that farmhouse that's going by. And what I noticed up there in Pennsylvania is there was this old Highway 22 that paralleled a good part of the interstate I was on, which I think, did I not write this down? It was like I-90 or something. But whatever it was, it paralleled the interstate through a good portion of Pennsylvania. And I couldn't get off the interstate to hit it. There was only a few exits that actually accessed it, and I saw it too late. And I couldn't hit it, but I could have spent probably 30 or 40 miles at 60 miles an hour instead of stop and go traffic, right? And actually just enjoy the scenery and what was there. And of course, because I'm by myself, I didn't have anyone alongside me going, hey man, can you check your map, see if there's a way out of this? Can we get off of this interstate and bypass it somehow on some state highway? But that's the point here. Tips and tricks. You find yourself in some situations where things aren't working out so great on the interstate. Take a look and see if there's some old highway or some access road that basically just skirts the interstate and goes the entire distance. Because guess what? Even if the interstate's moving 55 or 60 is not that, 60 or 65 is not that much less than 70 or 75. 10 miles an hour only makes the difference of 10 miles over the course of an hour. Is that really that much to give up to feel a little bit less stressed and also actually take in the world that you're there to try to experience? Because it's a lot more feasible when you're not afraid you're about to die. Anyway, once I got through Pennsylvania, get through New York, I actually found a little bit of a back way to take some of it off. And what I found was the Palisades Parkway. And it was a really, really nice little drive through the Hudson Valley Peaks. It's properly called the Hudson Valley Highlands. And it was beautiful. And that's where you're like starting to see some real history. You're getting to slow down a little bit. You're getting to see the actual terrain, the geography of the area, which was gorgeous. But you're also starting to see a lot of the history because you're going slower. You can actually see the signs, right? Anyway, I started to see all these historic signs. Like there's a couple of things that happened. First of all, I had to go through the Palisades Parkway. Again, beautiful terrain. Then I hit New York Highway 9D. And I'm pointing that out because anyone ever gets around up there, you might want to go check it out. It was a pretty cool drive. There was a little town or a little village called Phillipstown, and then there was a little town called Garrison. And you go by this sign. I went by this sign, and it said the path of Benedict, or it said the path of Benedict's flight. And I Googled it and had Siri read to me what that was about. Anyway, it was the old road. I was crossing the old road where Benedict Arnold made his flight after he was discovered in his treason down to the boats to take him out to the ships. Basically, when he had to defect, they figured out he's a spy, he's treasonous, he's working against us. He got busted, and he took off on a flight. And I drove across the path where Benedict Arnold was making his flight from the U.S. back to the waiting arms of the British because he had been caught in his treachery. So that's like what we're talking about here. This is the kind of history we're talking about when you get into areas like this. The roads there, too, that you'll end up following. Peekskill Road in the village of Nelsonville. Super, super cool. Like, this was like quintessential New England. When you think of New England from TV shows, from movies, this is what we're talking about, man. Like, it's the 18th century houses, like the colonial era houses. Oh, my God. You're, like, driving by, and you're like, oh, there's a house. Yeah, it's a 300-year-old house, like you do. Like, here, the oldest house you're going to find, the oldest structure in Fort Smith is what? 1838? So 180 years old. Up there, they're like 280 years old. They're like 350 years old. Like there's entire neighborhoods of colonial houses, meaning they were built in like the 1700s, 1750s, 60s, 70s, 80s. Mind-boggling. And you're driving through it and you're like, I'm on a movie set. I'm not driving on a road trip through this little town. I'm on a movie set. That's what it feels like. It's everywhere. And again, the value of getting the hell off of an interstate. That's what I did, is I jumped off the interstate because I'm like, I'm skirting right across the edge of New York City. This traffic is insane. There has to be a way around this. And I was able to find one, and it's taken this Palisades Parkway, New York Highway 9D, Peekskill Road. And this is when it really started to feel like, ooh, I'm really on a road trip, because now I'm starting to see culture of a different area, or a different area and a different era. That actually works. It was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. After, 15, 20 hours on the interstate of essentially seeing nothing, 2.5 days, suddenly this cutoff, it's like, bam, here it all is. I drove across this enormous bridge across the Hudson. Okay. Oh my God. I didn't even bother to look because I didn't even know the name of the bridge, but I promise you we were 250, 300 feet up over the valley. It had to be. Like, we go over bridges and you look down and it's like, oh, it's like 80 or 90 feet to the water. This was like way triple that. It was enormous. I was like, the scale of this engineering was absolutely mind-boggling. That was the moment. When I crossed that bridge, I went through a roundabout. By the way, they love their wreckabouts up there, as we like to call them here, because there's no one on this planet, even back in Europe, you Europeans are so hoity-toity about your roundabouts, and you think they're so upscale or whatever. Ain't even none of y'all smart enough to handle a wreckabout, right? Nobody knows how to work a roundabout. They're a nightmare. They're supposed to make traffic keep flowing, I guess. But like, guys, we're talking about a population of mindless sheep here. Even the most intelligent amongst us struggle with roundabouts, right? Anyway, we're getting on to really, honestly, 30 minutes, the second half of the episode here. So we'll cut it there. When we come back, we're going to really get into the good stuff, because we're going to pick right back up with day 3. And guess what? Day 3 finds me in Lexington and Concord, in Salem, and in Boston. And that's where this is going to get to be a lot of fun. So you guys hang around and we'll be right back after our sponsor break. What is up, all of you wayward souls? I want to tell you guys about our newest sponsor, Bendetti Optics. a brand based right here in the good old US of A, Portland, Oregon, to be exact. And I bought my first pair of Bendetti sunglasses about a year and a half ago and fell in love with them, so much so that I got online and ordered a couple of more pair. And when I did, there was a small shipping snafu, an order fulfillment snafu, and I got on the phone, gave him a call, and guess what? I get a call back from who? One of the big men themselves, right there in Portland, from the top of the chain. Have a great conversation, and we end up starting this great relationship we have. They more than made right the little snafu that occurred, and I am now a huge proponent of them because I can tell you from personal experience they are good people, and they're trying to compete with the big boys out there, coming in at a price point of about $40, but using the exact same frame material, TR90, and the same polarization process as the big guys. As it turns out, something I think we are already probably knew in our hearts, when you buy big name sunglasses, you're buying a big name, not necessarily any more quality than you can get somewhere else, like at Bendetti Optics. They have 29 different styles. They have multiple polarization options for whatever climate you happen to live in. And they back it up with like this lifetime guarantee that if your dog eats your sunglasses, it doesn't matter how you break them, send it back in with a check to cover shipping and handling and you're golden. You got a new pair on the way. These guys are truly trying to do it right, and they have this philosophy that a really good pair of sunglasses should not cost you so much that you are afraid to wear them. And I think all of us outdoorsmen can relate to that. So if you guys, like me, are very practical and like to get more bang for your buck and wear some great looking sunglasses, check out BendettiOptics.com. That's BendeTi optics.com, or you can go over to Instagram/BendettiOptics. And that I highly suggest, whether you buy a pair or not, just to check out the cutest pupper you'll ever see modeling sunglasses. Once again, that's BendettiOptics.com, and make sure and let them know Wayward Stories sent you. And welcome back. Thank you guys for hanging around through our sponsor break. Let's get on to day 3, because there's much to do and less time to do it in. All right, day 3. I stayed in a place called Woburn, Massachusetts. It is pronounced, or it's spelled Woburn. It looks like Woburn or Woburn maybe, but it is not. It is Woburn. Just trust me on this and say it Woburn if you ever go up there, because it's a pretty decent place to stay, actually, not that far outside of Boston. It's right in between not only Salem and Lexington and Concord, but the Saugus Iron Works, which is an extremely historic and important site in American history, is just to the south. Also, Walden Pond. By the way, we're going to have a word about Walden Pond in just a moment. But Woburn is kind of perfectly situated right in the heart of everything. It's a pretty nice little area. You can get pretty nice hotels there. And you're equidistant to everything. And also they have a couple of metro transits. They're trains, okay? In St. Louis, we called it the Metro. It was called the Metro. I stayed there. I rode the Metro in St. Louis just for giggles, right? It was super fun. Great way to see the city. As I'm finding out in places like the Northeast, absolutely the best way to get around, but we'll talk about that a little bit here in just a minute. So let's get started on day 3. So I wake up and the plan is I'm going to go to Walden Pond. For God's sakes, it's 18 minutes from where I'm at. Come on, man. Thoreau's cabin is out there. Y'all might remember me talking about Thoreau and Emerson and Gifford Pinchot and all these different names back, I don't know. Oh, the towards a philosophy of wilderness episode. And then before that, I'd been talking about them on and off because as I struggled with this, all these fake ass people out there trying to pretend to be outdoorsy so they can get their Instagram followings. So I'm talking about the Thoreaus and the Emersons and these guys that were like fighting for preservation and actually cared about what was there and what was deep and meaningful about it, right? So I go to Walden Pond and I'm like, I'm going to see Walden Pond. I'm going to get a sunrise photo of Walden Pond. I did not. Ask me why. Justin, why did you not get a when you drove there, right? Yeah, I drove there. Why'd you not get a picture? Because for out of state people, it's $30 to park your car, to go out there, to walk around this lake where Thoreau retreated away from commercialism and capitalism to think deeply and ponder and wax philosophical and write and pen words about the evils of commercialism and capitalism. Listen, I understand the need for money to preserve a site. I do. But charging locals $8 and out-of-staters, people who might make a pilgrimage to such a, in a sense, sacred site, Walden Pond is famous in its own right. To park your car, to walk in nature. I did not pay $30 and I did not go in out of a spirit of defiance and unity with Henry David Thoreau, because I feel like Thoreau would be infuriated that they couldn't find another way to own a giant piece of ground, right? A lot of places do that. Something like Walden Pond, there's probably a Friends of Walden Pond group out there somewhere that could probably pull so much damn money. Like, if we can do it at these little crappy historic sites all over the country where they're not even important, like of a national significance, they're like local significance, and people pull money together for that, you know, without charging people $30 to park, especially if they're out of state. Like, oh yeah, by the way, we don't like tourism either, so don't come here. We're going to charge you out the nose. It's like Oklahoma. They're $50.5, or it's probably more now, charging double or triple to out-of-state people for a 3-day license, a 1-week license, than it's for a whole year for an in-stater. It's like, you don't want people to come here and give you their money? Like, I don't know, man. Like, maybe that's all controversial. Y'all can controverse about it all you want. Don't send me an email. I don't care. Thoreau wouldn't dig it. I can assure you, because I've read Thoreau. You should too. You should too. You should read Thoreau and Emerson. See their intrinsic differences. Learn about Gifford Pinchot. Learn about all these guys. Learn about it. It'll broaden your mind. It's important. But anyway, disappointment at Walden Pond. It didn't get any better when I went to Minuteman National Historic Site. I did get to walk to the Old North Bridge, where some of the first shots, the first commanded shots of the Revolutionary War were fired. The first shots commanded by the Revolutionary Army. The first shots were obviously at the Lexington Battle Green, and we're getting there because I went there. But the first shots that were commanded by an officer in the Army to fire upon British soldiers happened at the Old North Bridge, and I stood there. I got to walk on that bridge in the cold, in the rain. It's very fitting. It was very fitting. I took some videos. I may actually turn them into something for the YouTube channel. We'll see. When I have a little more time, I may just do that. I don't know if it turned into much because the parks were closed for the winter. Like, it's crazy. Well, I can now say I work at a National Historic Site that's not of nearly the national significance of Minuteman, and we're open all winter. But whatever. You know what? Justin, like I said, I just tell you what I think now. Like, it's probably going to tick people off, whatever. How you closing for the winter? I mean, I was there. Like, next year's America's 250, right? Huge deal in the Park Service. Huge deal governmentally. Everyone's getting their stamps now, their 250 stamp, and each stamp has your site's name on it, right? We've got ours. I was like, I have to go to Minuteman and get my 250 stamp, right? That says Minuteman, where it all began, where 250 started. Not Justin, no sir, because they're closed for the winter. Could I go out and walk Battle Road? Yes. Could I go out and see all the taverns, the important sites along the way? Yes, I could, but I could not go in a visitor center. I could not talk to rangers. I could not get a stamp, and that was highly disappointing. But I will say this. As I drove through that valley on my way to the Old North Bridge, and I saw Battle Road running along beside me for the first time, it sent like a weird electric shock through my bones. And I'm not that. Like, listen, you guys know I'm an emotional dude. I wear my heart on my sleeve. I say it like it is most of the time. I feel my feelings, and I tell you about it. And I love history. I love culture. I love important events. But not to the extent that I react emotionally to them. And I didn't react emotionally. It wasn't like tear in my eye, rah, rah, America. Like, no, y'all don't want to know my thoughts about that. It was just like, this is where maybe one of the, no, not even maybe, the single most consequential event in the history of the North American continent occurred. I can argue that statement. I'm not gonna waste y'all's time with it, but I feel safe saying it because I can argue that statement. I don't think you can bring me anything else that is more consequential to more people over a longer period of time in North America. Around the world, sure, we could argue about it, but for North America, that's probably the single most consequential moment and things that affect our lives right now. Right now, where I'm sitting today and what I'm doing is affected in some way through the butterfly effect of the things that happened on that day on that road. And I felt it. When I drove by there and saw it, it like literally sent a shock through my muscles, through my bones. And I was like, oh, shit, there it is. Wow, I am there. Holy crap. It was wild. Altogether, not a loss. I did get to explore Northbridge, Battle Road, but yeah, just really disappointed. And Walden Pond, and then not being able to go in the visitor center. But then I went back into Lexington to the Battle Green, where the shot heard round the world truly happened. It really was kind of a sobering and chilling experience. That's what I've written in my travel journal here. To kind of, I make really quick notes in this journal as I go through the days on my adventures, because I go and I do and I see so much, I will literally forget important stuff. And what the most important things are is the emotions I feel or the thoughts I have in the moment I'm having them, because once they're gone, they can be kind of gone unless they really set down inside of me. So I make these little kind of scrawled notes in that moment, and that's what I've put here. And it was. And it was an interesting day there. There was actually two sweet little ladies standing there beneath the Minuteman statue at the front, at the head of the Battle Green, with no king signs. How interesting, some 250 years later, to have folks protesting no kings. No kings then, no kings now, as one of their signs said. That was really pretty special. I went over and talked to them and chatted with them about it. I'm not making a political statement here, and I'm not choosing sides at all for the sake of this podcast. Oh, I definitely have my feelings about it. But I went and talked to them, and we had a great conversation, and they're just the two coolest people, and they had a whole group that was going to be showing up, and it was really interesting. I mean, that's culture right there. That's an important cultural moment. These people doing this thing in that precise place, the place where the revolution, where America began to free itself from tyrannical dictatorship. It was interesting. It's very, very potent. It was a very poignant thing. And I did walk around on the Battle Green, and I did go over see the boulder where they stood and where the first shots ended up being fired. And that quote is, it's a really, really interesting quote that historians don't think it was stated exactly as it was. It was essentially, don't fire unless fired upon. But if they mean to have a war, let it begin here. It's chilling words. It's very stirring words. It's very theatrical words. And there's some question about if they were stated exactly as that through different testimonies and different newspaper reportings way back, concurrent way back. And people argue about it, but the gist of it remains true. It was like, you guys do not fire on the British regulars unless they fire on you. And a shot rang out. To this day, nobody knows who fired it. We know that the colonial army was starting to disperse, and then a shot was fired and it was on. I also can tell you that on the edge of the Battle Green, the men who died that day, the colonial men who died that day, were brought and interred there on that spot on a corner of the Battle Green. So it is also sacred ground. So treat it as such. When you go there's a burial right there on the corner, and there's a monument that marks it. It was really, really, that was a sobering place. The things that you can see there in Lexington, and I'm going to knock these out real quick, kind of Wayward Story style, so you can kind of see what you can do there, and we'll talk about it real quick. So they have this really cool brochure, and I'm going to do it from here, which is a self-guided walking tour. On the morning of April 19th, 1775, the first blood was spilt in the dispute with Great Britain, as George Washington wrote in his diary. In that short skirmish, 77 militia faced an advanced column of 100 light infantry out of 850 British regulars. 8 colonists lost their lives, 10 were wounded, and 2 British soldiers were injured. After the battle, Samuel Adams exclaimed to John Hancock, What a glorious morning for America. And keeping in mind what happened here on the Lexington Battle Green is the morning after Paul Revere made his ride. One if by land, two if by sea, the British are coming, the British are coming. All that happened over the course of the previous hours of that night, and this was in the morning. So after this happens, the British continue to advance over towards the Old North Bridge. Anyway, we have the Minuteman statue here, said to be a likeness of Captain Parker. It faces the direction from which the British regulars approached in 1775, and this is where those ladies were protesting, and I have pictures of that. The Parker Boulder marks the line where the militia faced the regulars on April 19th. As tradition has it, Captain Parker uttered his famous words, "Stand your ground, don't fire unless fired upon, but if they mean to have a war, let it begin here." And as he ordered his men to disperse, after the British told them, "Lay down your arms and disperse," a shot rang out, and this provoked the regulars to fire upon the militia, and the militia fired back. And to this day, like I said, no one knows who fired that shot, but Parker's Boulder is right there on the corner of the Battle Green, and you can go stand there where those famous shots were fired, no matter what the quote actually was. Ye Old Burying Ground, and yes, it is called Ye Old Burying Ground. Across the street, behind the First Parish Church, Revolutionary War families are buried here, as well as the British soldier wounded on the retreat from Concord. And then you also have, there's a few other things here, I'm not going to talk about all of them, but then you also have the Buckman Tavern. The militia gathered here on April 19th to await the regulars. Right before the battle begun, Paul Revere ran from the tavern carrying John Hancock's trunk to hide it from the advancing British troops because it contained papers that could have proved their treason. Lexington Visitor Center guide and map was produced by the Lexington Visitor Center in the town of Lexington. And this is a great map. And if you're watching, you can kind of get an idea of the map. And on the back side, it has all the information. It's a really good map. But anyway, you should definitely check that out if you go up into this area. To go over to the Old North Bridge, to go over and walk the battle road, to go over and see the major points of interest where the first shot was fired, the shot heard around the world, it'll hit you, man. It'll hit you. Even if you're not into history, if you just understand the significance of the American Revolution and the fact that you are a free citizen today in America with all of your freedoms that you don't even fully appreciate, it'll still hit you. It'll still hit you. But we're going to move on to the next half of my day, because the next half of my day is actually probably more interesting than the first half because more stuff starts to happen. In the next half of my day, I tried to find a dang train station that could ride me into Salem. Actually, what I decided to do is try to ride into Boston because the transit runs out into these outerlying areas. If I can get a train station to ride into Boston, then I can take another train back into Salem, explore Salem, and then have that train back into Boston and be in Boston at night a little bit. And then I could come back to here and then just drive over to my hotel. It didn't work out that way. What I ended up having to do, and I'm not going to waste any of y'all's time tonight talking about how big of a train wreck that plan was. Took me a couple of hours, but I did finally manage to just drive to Salem. Also, don't necessarily recommend that. But I drove into Salem and I explored Salem for a couple of hours, and I got to go see, what I actually got to see was the Salem Maritime National Historic Site and the historic wharf down there, the Derby Wharf. I was able to walk out on the wharf. I was able to see the Friendship, the ship Friendship there in Salem, Friendship of Salem. I could not go into it because it's under repairs, but I was able to walk out on the wharf, see the North Point Lighthouse, go into the Customs House, which is just it's so cool. And it's a national park administered site. They were open. I was able to get my America 250 stamp there. And I was also able to get it at the Salem Armory, which is the kind of Salem Welcome Center. And it is also a national park site, and was able to get my stamp there. I highly, highly recommend going to both of those sites. As far as exploring Salem for the witch trials, which is one of the reasons I wanted to stay there. Not so much. It's really spread out. Salem's bigger than you think. And what was going on in Salem was spread out over a much broader area than you think. Like the John Proctor house, which was an important part of that whole thing. John Proctor was a big part in that whole deal. It's like a mile or two up a hill. And then Proctor's Ledge, where he was supposedly hung, where the memorial is for the witches that were hung unjustly. In the middle of town, they have a lot of really distasteful tourist trap money making things with, like witches, woo, 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 witches. And like, they were innocent human beings that were unrightly and unjustly tried because they were women or because they were men who just happened to fall outside of the cultural norms. And they were literally murdered for no reason, because they were something that doesn't exist, because of all kinds of socioeconomic, sociocultural reasons. I don't think anything that plays into and leans into a fun, yay, adventure time with witches is in any way tasteful or appropriate way to remember people who were murdered for being different. Yeah. So there's that. There are some places like the Peabody Essex Museum, which do a proper job of telling a good story respectfully. That was nice. And there's also a memorial to the witches there where I got to listen. When I got back into Salem that night, I'll go ahead and tell you now because we're in Salem. This happened several hours later when I got the train back into Salem before I went to my car. I walked around downtown to try to get some pictures, and I got to listen to a witch tour, one of the tourist tours. And I was listening to that docent give his version of the story, and he tried to keep it, but he also didn't, like talking about ghost, and you might see the ghost of so-and-so. I'm like, I just feel like making money off of people who were murdered 200 years ago for being different. It just feels kind of dirty to me. It feels kind of dirty. If you wanted to give me a guided historic tour where you told me the facts and nothing but the facts, and didn't try to woo it up to appease all the simple-minded folk in the audience, I could get down with that. The story itself is interesting enough. It should be interesting enough for anyone to learn about. But to go there for this one-off, yay, fun, witches are fun, it just seems wrong. What if one of those was let's put it this way. What if one of those was one of your ancestors? What if it happened today? Oh, it is. Oh, yeah. Ooh, I said the quiet part out loud. Anyway, moving on. Salem is beautiful. Salem is historic, and the history of Salem is awesome. And if you look in the right places, you can experience the history of Salem, and you can experience it with a little bit of class, right? Like I said, Peabody Essex Museum. And also, by the way, if you don't like the way I'm saying this, go online, do your research, get into Reddit's a great place. Get into the Reddit threads, and you go, and the people that live in Salem have entire threads talking about if you want to come to Salem and you want to do it right, skip all the tourist crap because it's a joke. Go to the Peabody Essex Museum, go to the Maritime, the Customs House, go to the Salem. They give a few great examples. Get on there. Go find those threads. Everything I'm saying, somebody that lives there already said about it, and I just went and found out for myself. Okay, so I'm just backing up what they said. Anyway, Salem's beautiful. Salem is historic. The photography, guys, the houses, the freaking 18th century houses, like the colonial style houses, the ocean front, the bay. Oh my gosh, the harbor, not the bay, the harbor. Now that'll get me in trouble. Some of you mariners out there, that'll get me in trouble. But the harbor, Salem Harbor, is so cool. And it is so quintessentially New England, Atlantic Ocean, safe harbor. It was really, really cool. And there's a great metro station that runs every hour on the hour into Boston. So that's what I did. And this was one of the most adventurous parts of Justin's adventure, was getting on the transit, onto the train, the MT, whatever, and riding the train on Old Hartford and New Haven tracks. You know me, I'm a railroad nerd. That was cool. And getting to see some of the old signal houses as we passed by them. And I got to ride the commuter train from Salem into Boston, hop off the train at the North Station, and that's where you want to end up at. It's North Station. It's like the terminus point of everything, all points north. So you're going to end up at North Station, and you're right in the the old north part of town, the North Shore part of Boston. And it was super cool, guys. I only got to spend 2 or 3 or 4 hours there. Maybe it was 3 or 4. But let me tell you, I got to go in the Old North Church. Why is everything Old North? It just hit me. The Old North Bridge. It's where the freaking first, actual proper battle happened. The Old North Church is where it started. That's where the lanterns were hung, y'all. 1 if by land, 2 if by sea, and it set off the American Revolution. I got to go into the Old North Church. I haven't actually posted those pictures yet. I will get them up on my Instagram. I didn't get pictures inside the church. I took some of the outside and some of the other stuff around Boston. I'll get those up before the next day or two is out. But I got to go in the Old North Church, and I got to go in the crypts beneath. And because I didn't want to pay an exorbitant sum, I didn't get to go up in the belfry where the lanterns would have hung. But you can do... No, you know what? It wasn't because of the money. It was because it was too late in the day, and they weren't running that last tour. The last one had already run, because I don't care how much it cost. I would have went up in the belfry to see where those lanterns hung. So... you can go in the Old North Church. You can follow the Freedom Trail is one of the things. You have the Freedom Trail. Here's a little brochure. I'm not going to read a whole lot about it, but basically, if you know history at all, you've probably heard of the Freedom Trail. But in Boston, you follow the old Freedom Trail. You can get maps for it online, and it's got these cool little metal things in the sidewalks. And basically, you go to all these places like the Old North Church and taverns where people met, and to Bunker Hill, right? Like where you go up and see where that major battle occurred, which I did. That's on the old Freedom Trail, so you can do that. So I went to the Old North Church, and here's the most cool, to me, the coolest thing about it all. Just riding the train into town, just riding the metro into town, getting to see the sights as you go by, running across by the harbors, seeing the trains, the old tracks, the old signals, the torn up industries, like that's so cool to me because you're getting a feel for where you're at. You're getting to take it in, and you're not driving. You were sitting and just taking it in. You're a passenger. It's out of your control, so you have the chance to see it and absorb it. You get off the train, suddenly you're talking to Bostoners, and then suddenly you pick up the accent yourself, and every other thing you say is an F word, right, Karen? Like, I picked it up hard. I mean, enough that I fooled a few people with it. Okay, I'm just saying. It's Boston's beautiful, y'all. It's gorgeous. It's clean. It's like San Francisco. I hear all these people out here in Arkansas, and they're like, oh yeah, those cities are full of homeless people. They're so dirty and dangerous. The hell they are. They're beautiful. They actually put money in infrastructure. No, it's our cities here in the center of the country that are crap and filled with all the stuff that you say all those coastal centers have. Because all our industry died, because we sent it off all overseas, right? We don't have any industry anymore. So Detroit died, and Chicago died, and like all these manufacturing places, Fort Smith died, like all these places. We're where that's at. Like out there, they put money, they got 300-year-old buildings. Who's paying for that? I don't know. Someone is, because people out there care about that stuff. You can walk into all these cool old buildings. You can see all these things that are preserved. We don't have anything left here, right? Out there, I never felt uncomfortable and unsafe in Boston, anywhere I was. Same when I was in San Francisco and San Jose, Santa Cruz. I've never felt unsafe. When I was in St. Louis, I was in some sketchy hoods, y'all, and I never felt unsafe. Boston's beautiful. I mean, it was magical to be there at night, to see all the lights and the freaking ancient, by North American standards, buildings. And I got to go, a friend of mine said, you have to go to Mike's Pastry, because when I went up there, a friend of mine told me, you have to go to Mike's Pastry, and it's right up there on the North Shore. I went and found Mike's Pastry, and I got a cannoli, and I had a sweet yellow cream cannoli, or maybe it's just a yellow cream cannoli, because I don't remember how sweet it was. It got powdered sugar on it, and I sat there in a park in the pitch dark with all these beautiful lights and beautiful buildings all around me. Everything was just shining, and I was eating a cannoli, and I don't think it gets any more Boston than that. It was awesome. It was awesome. And then after I finished that cannoli, I ate the freaking blueberry muffin I bought, because it was as big as a softball, and it was glorious. And my stomach hurt, but it was worth it. I walked it off real fast, because I went from there over to Bunker Hill, and that's a walk, y'all. You got to walk across the bridge. You got to go up 4,500 miles to get to Bunker Hill. That's what it felt like in the middle of the night. But I went to Bunker Hill, and I saw it, after dark and it's lit up. It's gorgeous. I mean, it's national significance. This is where the American Revolution happened, right? Like, what else? Did I do anything else in Boston? Let me make sure I'm not missing anything in Boston because there was so much. There was so much. I had like 2 pages in my travel journal on Boston. Old North Church, went to the Crypts and walked to Mike's Pastries for cannoli, to Bunker Hill. Oh, yeah. I had a slice of pizza actually at Old North Station. I had a slice of pizza at Garden Slice. Oh, my God. That's the most perfect thin crust piece of pizza I have ever had in my life. Don't ask me to describe it. I don't know how to describe it. And maybe it's because I was starving, but it was like, God, it's going to be weird if I try to describe everything that was glorious about it. But as far as thin crust pizza goes, which is Justin's thing, it was the best one I've ever had. I don't know. Is that Boston style pizza? Do they have Boston style pizza? New York has New York style pizza. St. Louis has St. Louis style. I mean, even Columbus had Columbus style and it was good. Detroit definitely has Detroit style pizza and it's really good. But it's like a deep dish thing. This was the best thin crust pizza I've ever had. And I stood there. And for me, I love people watching and I love the energy of people like in places like that where people are there and they're having fun. As a matter of fact, Maroon 5 was at TD Gardens or whatever. I think the old Boston Garden. Anyway, they were right there attached to essentially the Old North Station. And there were these lines. Everyone's going in to see Maroon 5. So there's all these happy people. There's people going to the show. There's people going in and out on the transit to go into town to party. It was like Friday night. No, it was Saturday night. There was just a lot of good energy in there. And I'm just watching people all dressed up, going wherever they're going. I'm enjoying my slice of pizza. I'm waiting on my train. It doesn't get any more Boston, and it was awesome. It was awesome. The whole trip was worth that. The whole trip was worth that 3 or 4 hours taking the train into Boston. It just was. I won't go back. It was gorgeous. I had so much fun walking all the hell over Salem and Boston. It was a good day. It was a good day. So here is your insider tip. I said some of this will be kind of a idiot's guide, right? Your insider's tip, in my opinion, from what I just experienced on this trip is stay somewhere close to a good transit station with regular trains and just ride the train everywhere. Seriously, don't try to drive in this crap. Get where you're going and ride the train. You will thank me. If you do it the other way, you'll go, oh, dang, I really wish I'd listened to what he said. The train's actually a really nice way to see the city. It's also the single easiest way to basically get anywhere. And put on your walking shoes because, walk around, see it. You want to talk about a good way to absorb the city, the cityscape, the landscape. Just take the train and take the train everywhere and walk it out, baby. Walk it out. Anyway. Any of you watching the video on YouTube right now probably said, oh my God, did your hoodie just change? Did I have an aneurysm? What's going on? No, this is one of those things where I go back and edit something in, recorded after the fact because I forgot to as I was going through the show. So anyway, let's get back to the show. So let's get into day 4 and let's sort of wrap this out. I don't have a lot to tell you. Actually, I kind of do. Yeah, it's going to be a long episode. I'll try to keep it brief for you guys. We're doing a lot tonight. Justin got a job. Y'all been listening to me for how long? Justin got a job and a degree. There ain't no stopping me now, right? Like if I could do math, I would have been too powerful. Like the universe knew it. So on the day 4, I had to drive up to Manchester, and it was really beautiful from Woburn up to Manchester. It's kind of basically, it's through the forest of the Merrimack Valley, and then you've got a little bit of the sea coast. Oh yeah, I did that a little bit later. So let's just stick to the commencement. I need to tell y'all about that. Woburn to Manchester was beautiful. I'm just going to tell you this about commencement. Well, number one, it's tradition there apparently at this school to have bagpipers bring and lead basically the school leadership, the heads of the colleges and all that into the arena. So we had like the bagpipers and the marching drums, and they came through the arena, and I love bagpipes. Like they're chilling to me. They're haunting. It was beautiful. It was super cool. So we got bagpiped up in that mug. And yeah, I mean, I did the commencement part, got my degree. It was pretty cool. But what really I remember about it is how I couldn't keep it together. Like, I think all the emotions that I had not been able to process through 3.5 years of nothing but going like 16, 18 hours a day for work and for school and all the stuff you guys have listened to, it was no more. This was the culmination. This was the apex. This was the crowning moment. This is not like, oh, look at me, but more like it is complete. It is done. You survived. And not only did you survive, you thrived. You got a 4.0. Like, to get to hear your name, yeah, like apparently I can't talk about it now without getting choked up. Anyway, it was a big deal. It was a big deal. And what really hit me was everyone was there with their family. And I was there alone. Some, was just the nature of things. My mom didn't make it to see this. And for a lot of in a lot of ways, me doing this was trying to finish what she started when she went to school. And when she didn't have the chance through all of her circumstances to see through the degree she earned, right? A lot of this was about her. But it was the people that weren't there because they chose to not be in my life. Like, the weight of that for 8.5 years, I've had to carry that. And I've never, I guess, apparently never grieved it. Apparently. Like, I guess because I had to survive and pay bills and I didn't have the choice. But the weight of who wasn't there and, that betrayal, the weight of who wasn't there by choice, that hit me. And I barely made it out of that arena. I barely made it through the bookstore because I had a couple of things I had to get. I wanted to get and I had to get. And I barely made it through that bookstore. People could tell I wasn't okay. Like, I was red-eyed. And it was cute. It was really sweet how many people that I didn't know from Adam, of every race, of every creed, color, religious background, sexual orientation, how many people that didn't look like me, a middle-aged white dude, saw me, looked me in the eyes, and said congratulations, and shook my hand or gave me a hug. That was big. Anyway, I'm not trying to lose it on you guys here. I promise. But that was the weight of commencement for me. And when I made it to my car, I lost it. I ugly cried. I did. It uncorked. I think 45 years of stuff, but really intensely 8 years, 6 years, 4 years. The escalation, it uncorked. And I sat there and wept for an hour. I could not get it together. And I just let it happen, man. I tried to stop. Every time I tried to stop, I'd get a breath. And then it would just hit me again. And I was like, yeah, I knew in my head, I knew this is a lot of stuff coming undone right now. Just let it go. Let it happen. You got to let it go. Let it happen. And so I did. And it was meaningful. It meant a lot. Like, I think it was a healing moment because it was a grieving moment that I hadn't got to have over a lot of things that are kind of tragic, That's what this podcast has been around from the beginning, right? Remake yourself after tragedy. Well, guess what? It came full circle. I remade myself. Everything came to a head at once. I got the job. I got a degree. I got a new life getting started. Hopefully, it's all looking up. Hopefully. And that was the moment. And all the stuff that I went through to get to it, all of it came out at once, and it was a bomb. But anyway, I'm probably going to leave most of that in here in the edit, and that's really uncomfortable for me. But I think it needs to be there because I think some of you maybe need to hear it because maybe some of you need to do some stuff too. And I mean, now you know you can, right? Now you know you can, because if I can do it, you can do it. Anyway, give me a second here, and we'll get back to the fun part of this show. Okay, so I took a minute there. I got my stuff together. The rest of this day was really cool. And as often when you have a big moment of emoting like that, you do get a lot of endorphins, stuff come out. I was feeling pretty good, but I drove on up to Portsmouth because I wanted to make the most of the last half of the only really free time I had in the Northeast before I had to drive the same hell drive back, or a different one, but it's a long drive. I drove up to Portsmouth because it's literally right across the border from Maine, and I wanted to add Maine to my list. Portsmouth is awesome. I just got a few hours there. It was getting dark, but it became a really beautiful moment for me because Portsmouth is right there on the ocean. The Portsmouth Naval Shipyard is right there. You can walk across the Memorial Bridge right into Maine, and I could add Maine to my list, and it ended up being really, really awesome. The town in Maine is Kittery. Kittery, Maine's right across from Portsmouth, New Hampshire. That evening was really cool because it started snowing. So it's snowing on the harbor in a northeastern United States coastal town. And I got to do one of the things I wanted to do when I went up there. Is like, I have to have fish and chips. I'm not a big lobster guy. I'm not a big seafood guy, to be honest. But fish and chips, you can't beat. I mean, it's gonna be like fresh caught cod. So I did. I found a little tavern that was sitting right there, overlooking the harbor, and all these ships out in the harbor, and little boats and things, and their docks and the wharves and the things. And I got to sit there and eat fish and chips, and it was warm and it was cozy. There was a lit candle on my table. It was snowing outside, and guys, that is classic. That is classically what you think of when you think of Maine, when you think of northern New Hampshire, when you think of that northern seacoast. You think of snow, you think of blustery conditions, you think of little taverns with warm fires and candles going and a warm, cozy atmosphere. And I'm sitting there eating fish and chips, looking at all this and just absorbing it. And that too, that moment was one of those moments that the whole trip was worth that one moment. Taking that train into Boston, exploring Boston, and going up here to Portsmouth and to Kittery, and walking in the snow across that bridge into Kittery, Maine, and seeing a few of the things over there. That was worth it. The whole trip was worth that. And it was beautiful. And I highly suggest it. Super touristy, very expensive. Everything's very expensive. But you go up there on Bow Street, which is where these taverns are that you can pick from. These little restaurant sides. A tavern's not a great word. Down here, you might call some of them a sports bar. But they're different. Some of them are higher scale and they're more tavernish. Some of them are a little bit sports barish. But the one I went to, I probably wrote it down. Waterview Grill. It was really good. The fish and chips were really good. The view was awesome, and it was just a really neat experience. It was a great way to cap off the day of commencement because of who I am inside, being out there with the snow and the cold and the bluster and the Atlantic Ocean. It was special for me. It meant it's what I want when I go to travel. I don't want to just go somewhere and get my selfie, right? And be like, look, I visited the north rim of the Grand Canyon or whatever. No, I want to hike down in the canyon to the point I nearly die so I can come back and be like, I know what it means to experience the Grand Canyon. I don't want to go up to Portsmouth on the perfect day and get a little selfie in front of some statue or something and be like, I'm in Portsmouth. Look at me. I'm a world traveler. I want to go there and I want to freeze my chucks off walking across a bridge on the ocean and know what it's like to be someone who maybe lives there on the daily. What is it they experience? And so it was great. It was perfect for that. And it was a really good experience. So anyway, I made the trip back home in the snow, a little bit terrified in that traffic. But it wasn't too bad. The mountains are beautiful and the snow flying, what I could see. It's dark, of course, but there's headlights everywhere and and I got myself together and got ready to make the big drive home. And we're going to wrap this up. This is getting really long, but I am going to tell you one or two major points about the drive home. I drove a different way home, which took me straight across westward, across New Hampshire, and then across New York State to Buffalo. And from Buffalo, I skirted Lake Erie down to Cleveland. And from Cleveland, I shot down at more or less an angle and clipped through Columbus and God knows what else on my way to Indianapolis. That was the longest drive day of my entire life. I think I drove 17 hours so that I could get home on the following day to pick up baby girl for the first time in a week so we could hang out before she goes back out on the road herself to go see all of her families for their Thanksgivings. So I could get a little time with her. Um, and it was good to see her when I did get home. But I will say this, on the trip home, it's beautiful. It's basically called the New York State Thruway in New York and New Hampshire. I think it's like Interstate 93. You'll get told about 43 times driving that road, but it's like 80 cents at a time. Like it's just little tiny sections at a time. And I don't even want to see that bill. I don't even know how I'm going to have to pay that bill when it shows up. But it was a great drive. You're essentially driving through, let me see. First of all, for the first time in the whole stinking trip, not the first time, but the most extended time, I actually had a little sunshine in the morning. And it was really beautiful. I'm driving through the New Hampshire mountains all the way, which they're essentially, what are they called? There's Blackstone River Valley. It was gorgeous. The mountains are called the Berkshire Highlands, and locally they just call them the Berkshires. They got entire brochures. I have one in front of me. I'm not going to read from it. This episode's gotten so long, it's unnecessary. But they call them the Berkshires as you going through New Hampshire, and they're beautiful, like absolutely beautiful. It reminds me of every mountain range I've ever been in. As different as they all are, from the Rockies to mountains up and down the West Coast and down in New Mexico, in some way, even the Ozarks and the Ouachitas, in some aspects, it reminded me of all of them in different ways. But what I remember is they were really gorgeous, and they had really cool, proper marshes, like marshlands filled with like ducks and stuff and giant reeds, and it was just absolutely picturesque. It was absolutely beautiful drive. But once you cross the Hudson, across one of the tallest effing bridges you'll ever see. Again, this is a different place, but you're going across the Hudson River Valley, just like the one we talked about earlier, 4 million feet in the air, like holy God. But that's beautiful. But when you get into New York, it gets even more beautiful, because what you were doing is you were driving on the very northern edge of the Catskill Mountains along the Mohawk River Valley. And the Adirondacks are to your north on the other side of the valley. Much like here in Arkansas, the Ouachitas are to the south of the Arkansas River. The Ozarks are to the north. Up there, it's the Catskills are to the south, and the Adirondacks are to the north. And you're driving right in between all these things, looking at this beautiful Mohawk River. There was a couple of towns that I saw going through there. Let me see in my notes here where it's at. Fultonville, and you guys can email me about this one if you know the pronunciation. Canajoharie. Kanajahari. There are two little towns, Fultonville and Kanajahari, that looked like an urbex dream come true. They looked like they were probably quasi-industrial, tiny little towns or municipalities, and all of it looked like it was just like left to rot and hadn't been torn down, and it was like super cool. And now I was scooting through there on this interstate, the New York State Thruway, but they looked like, I feel like if you went and just explored the New York State Thruway and all the side roads and everything else and all the little towns along the way between like Buffalo and anywhere in New Hampshire, you could probably spend 3 or 4 days and have the time of your life. It was gorgeous. It was interesting. There's got to be plenty of history in that valley, from God knows, French and Indian War, the Revolutionary War, the railroad industry. I mean, you can't tell me they weren't trucking stuff from freaking Buffalo to Boston. Like, it was gorgeous. And that was one of the most pleasurable parts of driving. I love to drive. I hated my drives on the way up there because they were miserable bumper to bumper traffic. But this is wide open highway. The traffic was flowing. The views were beautiful. And I can drive that for 15 hours all day long. And it don't bother me that much. So, New York State Thruway, totally road trip dream come true, as far as I'm concerned. So y'all need to know that. From Buffalo to Cleveland, it was still good, smooth driving on essentially the same interstate. And you're skirting Lake Erie, but unfortunately, it's not like lakefront property, Lake Erie. Every so often, you can catch a glimpse of it off to your north, and it's like, oh God, there's the ocean. No, it's not. It's Lake Erie, because we forget how effing big the Great Lakes are. They're enormous. And from there, it was just pretty much unremarkable. The rest of the trip was, the rest of the trip's crap. Once I hit Indianapolis, especially, I've driven that road a billion times when I was with FedEx, when I worked in Indy, Kokomo, Terre Haute, all those places, St. Louis. It's the same interstate. So from there, more or less uneventful. Not that, nothing else really to speak of. So my big adventure, I had like a huge emotional outpouring that you guys all got to listen to a little bit of at commencement. I got to explore Boston and a little bit of Salem and ride the transit, and it was one of the coolest like for me, new experiences. All seeing all these new states was really cool, but that right there was the most organic, personal, in the moment, experience the place you are and absorb it that I had. Eating one of those freaking cannolis from Mike's Pastries down there in the North Shore and walking over to Bunker Hill and going into the Old North Church. That was awesome. Getting to walk around Salem Harbor and the old, yeah, it was really cool. And then again, up in Portsmouth, man, fish and chips in a cozy tavern while it snows outside. It doesn't get much more romantic than that, does it? So I had my moments. It was a rough trip. There was a lot of stress. I was worried about a lot of things, but there were moments that were totally worth it. And I definitely think a page is turning. Justin stepping from one part of his life into another. I mean, very literally. I don't think I'm being overly sensational about this. Really and truly, a whole lot of stuff is culminating at one time. An education, a step towards something more, and then the job happens, and the degree happens, and all the things are happening, and it's all coming to a head, and who knows where it goes from here? Who knows? I have no idea. But we're going to find out, right? We're going to find out one way or another. And anyway, I would like to thank all of you who've stuck around for this hour and probably 40-minute long episode. I'm thankful for all of you. On this Thanksgiving Day, I'm thankful for you. And all of my friends, then you know who you are. Our podcast friends that send emails and all my little circle of friends here in this world, the ones that do listen to this show. I'm thankful for all of you as well. Your support has been everything. And I hope that in whatever ways you've needed support from me, I've been able to provide that over these years. And I hope the same for all of you podcast listeners out there. I hope there's something about this show because it comes to you from the heart of someone who wants to, I don't know, edify you in some way and help you in some way with the things that I say. So I hope it's done that. And anyway, to all of you out there, thank you so much. And I'm telling you, we're going to have some more episodes coming up real soon that I think are going to be really interesting. I've got a couple I'm actually really excited to make, and they're going to be very fitting. But for tonight, we're going to call this a show, which is more than a show. It's 2 shows probably, but we're going to call it a show. And we're going to get out of here, and I'm going to leave you guys to your Thanksgiving trappings. And until we meet again, you guys remember to be good to each other.
Studio 119 would like to remind all of you out there listening, wherever you might be, that though the hill might be steep and the trail be rocky, the mountaintop